Good evening, everybody. We're here for the second Charter Review Committee meeting, and we will proceed with the call to order and then to roll call. Who wants, Joyce, is that you? You call roll?
Member Allen? Here. Member Bryan?
Here.
Member Philpott?
Here.
Alternate Member Brower?
Here.
Alternate Member Ortiz Morales?
I think she said she's not going to be here tonight.
Vice Chair Novick?
Here.
And Chair Northey?
I'm here. Okay, we have a new alternate member sitting with us tonight. And last meeting, Jeff, we went around and introduced ourselves, so we'd like to give you an opportunity before we go into the meeting.
Pledge.
What?
You want pledge?
It's not on here.
I know, but we normally do.
Okay, all right. So do we want to add pledge to the agenda from this point out then? Because it's not on the agenda, I didn't call for it. Okay, let's do Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Back to Mr. Brower. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, sir?
Hello, everyone. My name's Jeff Brower. I've been a Deltona resident since 1993. After being in the military, I served in the Navy. And after I got out of that, I got into real estate title examination. Been doing that for the last 35 years. I've had my own business for the last 12 years. And that's about it. Raised 2 kids here. Very proud of the city of Deltona and hoping that I can give a little something back. It's been a great city for me and my kids.
Well, welcome. We're happy to have you here. Madam Attorney, it would be my position that while alternates cannot vote unless they're filling a position of a regular member, when it comes to time for a vote, I would like to be able to include them in any conversation, any discussion. Is that?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
And I thought they can join in because they can fill us.
Well, but we've got our 5 members here, so there's no.
Oh, I thought you were, so you're just missing one? Oh, okay.
Yeah, one of the alternates.
Sorry.
But in the
Yes.
event, yes, of course they would sit in them, but for purposes of discussion, I would entertain them for discussion during any of our.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Sure.
Okay, wanted to be sure that was okay. So, Mr. Brower, be comfortable adding your comments on agenda items, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Approval of minutes. Has everybody had an opportunity to read the minutes? I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So we will move along to public forum. I do not believe we have anybody from the public here to speak tonight because he's actually sitting at the table. So, he has to behave himself tonight. Okay, we'll move to business, and we have a presentation by our fabulous Supervisor of Elections, Lisa Lewis, regarding referendum ballot language. And Lisa, we're so happy to have you here, and we just want to tell you what a great job we think you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're doing a super job, and we're excited to see where you go with all this new legislation coming your way.
We soldier on. Well, good evening. I don't have as much of a presentation as I had last night for the public that was here. However, I do want to speak to ballot language and what is required by statute. So when a question or amendment or a measure is submitted for the vote of the people, there is to be a title, and it is to consist of a caption or, a summary of what the question is going to be, what it's going to be known by. So like Amendment 4, let's just take that for when we put it on the ballot, or the state put it on the ballot about convicted felons and having their rights restored if they had paid all their dues and served their time. everybody started calling it Amendment 4, but the title on there was to restoration of a felon's rights to vote. And it is not to exceed 15 words. So in that title, it's limited to 15 words. Now, when you get to the ballot summary and leading to the question, it's to be printed in clear and unambiguous language, listed. It comes after the candidates contest, so it's, and when you get to municipal ones, they're all the way at the end of the ballot. So there is a certain order that we have to list the contest on the ballot. It is to be followed by the word yes and no. Yes, meaning that it would be approval of the question. So it's in language. If you add something to that, that yes would mean approval of the language and no would mean a rejection of the question. And we do have to you have to pass, the commission would, a resolution or ordinance calling to put the question or questions on the ballot.
Okay.
And then, should be an explanatory statement, and this is limited to 75 words. So you are limited to both the title and the question itself in summary. And basically, that's all I have control over.
Okay. Okay.
There is I would like to mention a time frame. I think that these will be for 2022, to put it on the regular general election if I shouldn't assume, but.
I believe that is the
Unless
intent of the commission, to
Okay.
do it in the 2022. Is it the November election, or are they going to do it in the primary? Has that decision been made?
Well, I'll give you both dates that we
Okay.
would like the language. Of course, the sooner the better.
Yeah.
That we know questions that are going to be on there with
Do you
laying out.
have to approve the language?
We do not.
You do not approve the language, so what
No.
is submitted by the city is what goes on the ballot?
Correct.
Okay.
And we do need it translated into Spanish.
Okay. So are there questions from committee members that would like to ask Don?
You said you were going to do the timelines for us?
Yes.
Okay.
If you want it to go on the August primary ballot, we would need it by the end of qualifying, which is June
Was it
17th.
June? Yeah.
Right around that time. That's a
Yeah.
Friday. We start laying out the ballot. We send to all the cities and different people to proof it and then getting it back. So the questions would be one to be proofed.
I think that's probably going to be a decision the commission
Yes. And if
is
it's
going
the
to have to
general election,
decide.
by the primary election.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Because as soon as the primary's over, we
That's
start
right.
laying
You have
out. Mm-hmm.
to go out and lay out the ballot, yeah. Okay.
Yes,
Mr. Vice Chair?
I would suggest that we have a discussion as a group and send a recommendation to the commission with regards to when they should place it on the ballot. We're an advisory board to them, basically, and that's part of their decision-making. We might be able to have some conversation about that and vet it out. Me personally, I'd want it on the general election. I wouldn't want it on the primary.
Right.
Because
You have a bigger
unfortunately,
turnout.
very few people come out and vote on the primary. And, we don't want a couple thousand people making a decision about the charter when you might have, 30 or 40,000 come out for the regular election. So, but if the group's comfortable with that, I would suggest that we have a discussion, we take a vote, and we send a recommendation to the commission.
Okay, do you want to add that to the agenda for today, for discussion now? Or do you want to
No,
do
we
that?
can, we can
For-
put it on a future
I
one.
think probably a
Because,
future
the
one.
public may
Yeah.
want,
Yeah.
that may be an item the public wants to
Yeah.
weigh in on, so I'd like to advertise that as
Yeah.
part of the agenda.
Okay, we can do that. We'll add
I
that.
do want to give you the statute where this is laid out. This is not a rule I have made up. This is Florida Statute 101.161.
Can you repeat that again, please?
101.161.
And that's all the election law.
Yes.
Okay.
I can't give you my book. It's marked up, but this is what it looks like.
Okay. Other questions for the supervisor? Mr. Bryan?
You were saying that to have it on a general election, it has to be in by the primary?
Yes.
Is that what you were saying?
So the ordinances, and I'm assuming there's first and second reading, so it would have to be
And I
have the second
understand,
reading and
I believe the commission
adopted.
also has to do public hearings. I
Yes.
don't know how they're going to
Okay.
do those, if they're going to go out or they're going to have them as part of the readings, whether that's will be considered, but they're required to do a public hearing on them too.
And when does early voting start for the primary?
For the primary, it'd be 10 days. So I think it's August 23rd, so 13th.
And do you know if there's any wording that you can't use as far as in the description?
It just has to be clear so that the voter, understands as much as, legalese they can. Clear and unambiguous language.
Okay.
And so that the question states that they would know if they voted yes, they're voting for it, or no, would be rejecting it.
Right, yes, okay. Thank you.
Ms. Allen, any questions? Okay. Mr. Brower, I'm sorry, I struggle with that one a little bit, just because every
The only
time I
thing
look over
was,
there.
Is there any place that has any sample wording that somebody's already done it that we can use?
Yeah, I mean, depending on what you all decide you're going to do with questions, I've been doing it for many, many years as far as writing. So once you get a topic or you have determined what you want to ask, then, you have a very small, basically, set of words we can use, and everything is controlled on the title and the words, and you have to count them, and, you have to meet all of those requirements. So it is, it's something I'm very comfortable with drafting, and then you all can review it, you can change it, you can add, or however you all want to do it. But if somebody's never done it before, I'm sure it would be, off-putting. But, I mean, and I have had, my own issues with writing those kinds of questions, because they're just not easy. You're very limited with how you can explain things. And that's, I mean, you want to explain it so that anybody can read it and understand. That's the whole point. And they can determine what it means if they vote yes and what it means if they vote no. They just don't give you a lot of leeway in how you put it together. So I just wanted to say.
You have to make the best out of the words you got.
Yes, and also you may have multiple drafts that, depending on how many questions you want to put forward, you all may struggle over, drafts, say you don't think it says exactly the right thing in this sentence and that sentence, and, it can, but again, it's all, you all will vote on these and recommend them to the commission. So I'm just a lawyer trying to fit words in that to make it make sense, but it's going to be the sentiment of all of you determining what are you asking people to do?
It does have to meet a legal test, though. It's been my experience in other charter reviews that the attorney does draft the language. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm happy to do it and count and do all of that stuff. I'm just saying that
The
you all-
intent is ours.
Yes,
Yeah.
and you may read it and feel like that just doesn't quite get it.
Okay.
And then you redo it, because again, I have to try and get your intent in a limited structure. But ultimately, if we have to do it 2 or 3 times, then we will, so that you're all comfortable with it, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
And if I could follow up with just 2 things also, that doesn't mean that you can't put any advertisements, any pamphlets, any literature out explaining further on an amendment. The state puts together a booklet on all the amendments that they put forth, because they are limited to the words on the ballot too, so they try and get the information out ahead of time.
Okay.
And Mitch Lewis and I have talked about that very point, and I'm committed that if, let's say, for instance, let's go to an extreme, that you rewrote the whole charter. Obviously, with the limitations on the ballot, you're not going to be able to say what all is happening. You basically say, we're replacing the current charter with a new charter. But my commitment is that we would put the money in place so that, as she indicated, as an educational thing, the city can spend money for education. And that could be in the form of giving them, in my extreme example, giving them the entire charter, and then where appropriate, have some discussion, much like you all would have. Now, for instance, if you wanted to change the terms of the office from 4 years to 2 years, you would say that, you know, section so-and-so we're changing from 4 to 2, and the reason is that the charter review felt it was appropriate, and you would have a discussion so that the public would understand why you made those suggestions. That is something I think is very important, that, you know, we do an educational component. So that's something you may want to think about as you're going through this. But I think the public deserves an opportunity to at least to have a booklet that goes to all the registered voters so that they have something tangible in their hand, so they have the ability to see exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
And Mr. Brower, to your question about samples, there are other cities that have put questions on the ballots, and we had 3 cities that put them on in 2020. So our sample ballots are on our website, and you can look at the questions, and if they may pertain to what y'all may want to put forth, you may see some language there. Every general election, just about, someone has put some charter questions on the ballot.
Okay. Thank you,
You're welcome.
Ms. Lewis. Please give your regards to your husband.
I will.
Tell him I said hello. Thank you.
Not that I'm trying to leave, but am I free to go?
This was easy duty tonight. Okay, we have presentation, that is completed. We'll move to discussion and review of sections 1 through 4 of the charter. There was a charter that was sent over to us at the request of, I don't know which, Mr., I'm sorry, go ahead. Mr. Philpott.
If I could, before we get into that particular discussion on sections 1 through 4, I've done some, if you could take one and pass these around.
I think so, yes.
We just got these.
I think somebody
We
passed
just
one.
got
Did you?
this.
Oh, you made
Yeah.
copies of it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I made copies too. All right.
These are what we just got from Joyce, so I'm just going to leave them.
Okay. I used up all my paper and printer out there. I did some research, since I didn't talk much last week, but I looked at Florida cities with populations between 60 and 95,000, so that it was similar in size to Deltona, using the city manager form of government. And on this first page, it's just an idea. The numbers after the city's name, for example, Deltona is 31 and Palm Coast is 32, is where the cities rank in the state of Florida by population.
Okay.
And so we've done 31 through Ocala, which is 61. And what I wanted to show is I just took the first 5 sections of each of the city charters of those communities, including Deltona, to show you the difference between how the various cities approached their city charters. Now, the city manager gave us a copy in our books of a guide for city charters. And so on the next page, I've put down the model city charter and the way that it arranges itself. Now, I do remember the city manager said that not everything within that model city charter could be used as we develop a Deltona charter. I would like to sort of follow what the city manager said with the extreme thing about looking at perhaps a rewrite of the charter instead of amendments. The charter is only 15 pages long. It's got 13 sections in it. a question for the attorney, though, is that as I read the state 166.031 on amendments, it only talked about amendments. It didn't talk about total rewrites. And now in the minutes of last week, we talked about, somebody brought up a total rewrite of the charter. So the first question I would have is it legal to, in fact, do a redo of the entire charter?
I've never seen one in Florida. That I'd have to do research. I mean, I was just looking up, like Palm Coast, one of the ballot questions they used to eliminate things that they felt were no longer pertinent. Because, you know, when you first create a charter, when you incorporate, there's a lot of information that's in the charter that goes to the beginnings of a city. So I've seen that kind of a charter amendment that basically takes one amendment to eliminate parts of the charter that you no longer believe are relevant. And then, you know, but I've never seen anybody, the most I've ever done at one time was Cocoa Beach one year did 6 charter amendments. So usually most only do 2 or 3, and I've never seen anybody replace an entire charter. So if that's where you all want me to look, I mean, I'll have to do.
That is not my interest.
But anyway, we would have to do research on
Yeah.
that, because I would have to see and look, and we might even in the end need to ask for an Attorney General opinion. I mean, I just have never seen it.
It has been my experience, and I've sat through several charter reviews and served in public office, that charters, you can, if there are issues with a charter, that an amendment on the ballot is usually self-correcting of that. You know, you present that to your community. I would be reluctant to wipe out the full charter and put out a new charter in such a short period of time for voters to then have to understand and recognize that there's a whole new charter out there. I'm not sure that I would be supportive of that kind of a move. But Mr. Novick, you have your card up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, rewriting the entire charter was not the decree of the commission.
Yeah, that wasn't.
The charge of the commission was to do a charter review
Right.
and to provide amendments. Those are, in my opinion, I'm not an attorney, but in my opinion, those are 2 entirely different set of directions by the commission that would have to be given. We were charged with reviewing and amending the existing charter, as I understand it, not rewriting the charter. Second of all, I would not support at all completely rewriting the charter because there are certain elements in that, I believe, that would face extreme legal challenges and would stall the amendment process where there are things in here that do need to be amended this or put to the voters this voting cycle to resolve issues. A complete rewrite of the entire charter, I think, would just stall this whole process, and I don't think it would even get City Commission approval. I'm not speaking for the commission, but you're talking, that's a major undertaking, and again, I don't believe that was our charge from the commission.
Okay, Ms. Allen?
I have a question for the attorney. The first night, you have to hold this
No,
down?
just-
Oh, okay. Okay. The first night we came, you mentioned that when the pandemic came and you guys had to do Zoom, you had to get permission for the governor, and that kept staying in my mind. Could you tell me why that was so?
Well, that's because we, in the Deltona Charter, you know, I mean, it was written 25 years ago, and so there wasn't really much use of technology at that time. So the governor, in his executive orders during the pandemic, basically gave local governments that didn't have the ability to have those kinds of Zoom meetings for a commission meeting, gave us the authority to be able to do it. And we, I think, and it also gave us the ability to have very limited meetings and exclude public and do a number of things we had to do at the very beginning. In our charter, there is specific, as you get to it, you'll see the specific language in our charter right now about meetings. And there is the understanding that a meeting where they do their official business takes place in this room for the most part, and that you need to be present to vote. And so present or in your seat or wherever, however you want to define it, was not defined at the time. And so the difficulty was if you were going to have a Zoom meeting, we really weren't in sync with the charter. And so the governor gave all, and there were many other governments that had this problem too, that they gave us the ability to deal with it in an extraordinary situation.
Okay, you did a good job in explaining that to me. So one of the things that, as we heard what she was saying, and we're looking at, excuse me, and we're looking at to review the charter, I think we should start in places like what she was just saying that we know need to be changed.
Well, we're going to go through every
I know,
of the
but I was
charter.
just saying, I know the time limit that we have and everything, which I know we're going through session by session.
Right.
But I was just making a suggestion for as, when we know there's an issue.
Yeah, I would encourage members to advance their education on the charter beyond what we have scheduled, like for tonight or what we scheduled for the next meeting, and just make yourself notes and be prepared to talk about those items that you think are important when we get to that item. But I think it's really important that we stay in some kind of order so that we, for the sake of the attorney for writing language. So do you have any thoughts about what Mr. Philpott is recommending or is talking about doing a complete rewrite?
I think I agree with you guys for as the amendments.
Okay.
Because if that's the traditional way that things been done in the past, and if that's how we're going to be able to make the changes we need to make to get everybody on board, then I believe we should do the amendments.
Okay.
But, I think that because the charter have not been reviewed or changed, that, maybe we may have a few amendments.
I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will. Mr. Bryan, do you have any, have any thoughts on this that you want to offer?
Well, one thing as far as a complete rewrite, that's one reason why I pulled Altamont Springs, because back in 1980, they actually did a full and complete rewrite. And the reason why they did that is because, one, they were going from a rural town that they were from 1967 to 1978, 79, into a more commercialized town. And they wanted to make sure they had protections not only for the commission and commissioners, but they also wanted protection for the city manager, the city lawyer, and ways to be able to arbitrate between the city manager and the commissioners and from the citizens to the manager. That's one reason why I pulled it, because at the very top of Altamont Springs, it lists why and how they were able to do it through state statute. But now, as far as rewriting the whole thing, you don't have to rewrite the whole charter to be able to rewrite most of it if you want to rewrite most of it. I mean, you can leave section 1 through 4, 1 through 5 alone and still rewrite most of it the other way, the way you want it to read and or otherwise. But I think as you go along, you're going to find that there's only a few things that really need to be corrected in our charter. But you also have to remember that Deltona, like Altamont Springs, is more of a housing town right now and not a commercial town. When Altamont redid this, they had basically a 50-50 split, even though right now we're 80-10. More 80% housing and 10% commercial. But as we get more and more commercial in here and we start building up the commercial base, maybe one day we might hit 20%. But you're going to need protections in the way we do government. And the only way you're going to get that is to rewrite some of the sections that are very vague. And one of those sections is like when it talks about interference by commission. Well, interferences, our managers pointed out many times, could be you have city workers working down the street on a water pipe, and let's say Commissioner Novich, when he was there, he went down and gave them water. That could be considered interference because they're interfering with a daily job. So that's a little vague.
But your position would be that we not throw out the charter and start new.
You don't have to blow up the whole charter to rewrite a lot of it.
Okay, all right, let me go back to Ms. Allen, and then Mr. Brower, I'm going to ask you if you have any comments, okay? But let me go to Ms. Allen first. She's got her.
I basically just put it up because one of the things that, you know, when I joined the charter committee, my reasoning is because of the future.
Sure.
And, you know, when we do start rewriting, making amendments, one of my main concerns is we think about the digital age, you know, because everything is digital. Even when we start thinking about bringing commerce to our area, we have to think about the digital age.
Okay, we'll be sure we can either find a place that's appropriate, or we can, if I understand it correctly, we could add an element. Would that be correct, Madam Attorney? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Brower, do you have any thoughts?
I agree totally that we've changed a lot since 1990. It was mostly all residential out here, and now I would like to see us address exactly what he's saying, that we're going to have a lot more commercial, and how we deal with that is not specific enough in here. Now, there are amendments, and you can get too many amendments, and then it becomes convoluted. Sometimes you can, what we call a restatement, you know, so we can take, in the legal world, you've probably done many of those yourself, where you can take 80% of this and just restate it without having to say much different, and then put in, so versus amendments, sometimes your amendments can get so multiple that it's better to just redo the whole thing, but not amend the whole thing. It's mostly a restatement.
Well, I'm not sure
that makes
that we
sense.
can do a restatement without it going, no, that's not
I mean,
possible.
this is like the Bible.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you can't just, I mean, you
we
can
just can't
paraphrase if you want to tell somebody, but when we have an issue that comes up and I have to look at the charter, there is limited interpretation that you can do. But for the most part, the word stand is the word stand. And so we can't, you know, I mean, I guess it would depend, we'd have to look at a specific example and see really what we have. But for the most part, in the areas that you all feel need to be changed, we're going to have to write that and write it as you all want to change it. And then
as
that
it will appear in the charter.
in the new,
Right,
if
in
it's
the revised
approved, then,
charter.
yeah, that would be part of the new charter.
Right.
But and we'd have to put that forward. Now, the city manager has just shown me two different places where Dufuniak Springs, I'm sorry, I don't know where that is in Florida, but anyway, and then of course, the situation with Altamont, those, you know, I will pull that information and look at how they did it, just so that I can share that information with all of you. So it looks like it has been done before. And I think that's what you were asking me, and I wasn't aware of it. So as you move forward and decide what you want to keep, what you want to change, what we need to look for, where you want something else, then we're going to have to look at how you guys determine you're going to go forward. Are you going to try and do some pieces? Like I said, I had found in Palm Coast, they actually took some of their charter that they felt was obsolete and of no longer of value, and they basically used a charter question to wipe that out. And so that's something we could consider too. Some of those provisions in there were necessary for the first charter, but may no longer be necessary now. So that's something we can look at too. So, I mean, you have a lot of different options. I think the hardest thing's going to be to figure out what you want. You know, like what you want to change, what you,
Probably wouldn't,
But-
after we go through the whole thing, and we find out that there's only 3 or 4 amendments we need,
yeah,
amendments
But
it is.
you- and-
We go through the whole thing and there's.
lots.
And
Yeah.
that's what I was just going to expand on what she said, and that is, at one time, Deltona did try to remove the section of the charter that had to do with the creation of the city, which is a very significant part of the 15 pages or whatever. But because there were so many other amendments on there, the voters just voted no on all of them. And so, you know, what you have to be careful from a political standpoint is, are we putting so many amendments out there that you throw their hands up and say no?
Say no.
And that's why I had made a suggestion that once you reach a certain threshold, it may be easier just to do, we're going to replace it with this. Even though it might be 80% of the same thing, you got one amendment versus 10. And that's the reason I brought that up.
Okay. Mr. Novick, and then we'll do Mr. Philpott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, some things that, as an example, in Altamont's charter, become unnecessary language and complicates the charter. As an example, right on the first page, there's section 2.02, annexations. That doesn't need to be in there. That doesn't need to be in there at all. It's a municipal power granted by the state of Florida. And here it says the corporate limits of the city of Altamont Springs may be extended as provided by law. Well, that just says it's already existing law, so why have it in the charter? So there are things that, going back to what Don said earlier, you know, about you know, the number of pages and the size of the city and stuff, we could make this a very voluminous and complicated document. On the other hand, when you look at things under the section 3.06 in Altamont's under prohibitions, they're talking about board members, meaning like this board, okay, or the Firefighters Pension Board, or the Parks and Recreation Board, or city-created boards. Well, is that something we really want to have in the charter, other than to say a board member needs to be a resident of the city? Maybe there may be an occasion that we can't foresee where we would want somebody on that board that isn't a member of the city, but has some technical expertise to the particular topic that the commission is appointing the board. So therefore, with regards to boards, it's better to have a commission policy decided by the commission so that their hands are not tied with the ability to address the situation that they're tasked with at that moment. So really, the language, if you will, in section 4 of our city charter that talks about it's a corporate body with the powers of a municipality. That's vague to some degree, but it may also be necessary to be vague in order to give the commission the ability to do what they need to do at the time. So we have to be careful about language that we remove or we insert into this document, again, as a recommendation. Obviously, the commission and the voters make the final decision. But we have to be careful about the language we put into an amendment to not just be driven by something that's currently going on that has been a hot political butt. Other items like technology and the ability to meet through a Zoom meeting or through some other electronic means, yes, that.
We can write that language.
Yeah, we need.
Maybe
we
a sentence.
We need to get caught up, but that
Yeah.
only needs to be a sentence
Yeah.
that says you can do it. We don't need to spell out how to do
Yeah.
it. For instance, a state statute, I'll go back to my previous life as a fire marshal. There's a state statute that creates the ability for the state fire marshal and the legislature to adopt rules, okay? The statute gives you the authority, the charter gives you the authority, and then the rules tell you how to do it, okay? Commission policies, ordinances, okay? We talked about this the first night that we were here when we kind of got an overview. So again, like I said the very first night, this review of the charter, this is a 30,000-foot view. We have to be, the language has to be broad enough, but has to be specific enough to address the concern. We can't tie the commission's hands, this one or future ones, with very specific language that narrows them down. And we can't have anything that conflicts with existing statute.
Yeah. I'm going to go to Mr. Philpott, and then we're going to go and we're going to start looking at the discussion and review of sections 1 through 4, which might pull some of our discussion now together a little bit. Mr. Philpott?
Yes, ma'am. Just real quick. I wasn't looking to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I wasn't looking to take the existing charter and just eliminate all of that content. I was asking for consideration to look at how could it be done, because I have the same concern the city manager just mentioned on numbers of amendments, that if you start adding things, it just becomes overwhelming to the voter of what is this, and then we have the 15-word restriction that we have on what the language is on the ballot. Perhaps it would be easier if you looked at it in total and said, okay, we can come out with a new product, but it still might be 80% of what the existing one was. When you were talking about previous life as a fire marshal and things, in my previous life when I was flying, we constantly had changes coming out for the airplanes. But we had a basic book that we did, and we inserted those changes into the book. And that's sort of what I was looking at here, that, yeah, there's a core wording that's in the existing charter that you continue to hold dear, but you look at how, as opposed to multiple amendments, you change or delete a big section of it, and that's so that you only got one amendment that's looking at what's going on.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Is there anybody on the group that thinks that we're going to come out with maybe more than a half a dozen
No,
amendments?
I've reviewed it. There's some things I would be prepared to talk about, but I think generally I don't think it's going to be a big change for me.
And I'm not talking about taking an existing section and, improving it or tweaking it. I'm talking about, big additions.
That depends on, at the end of the day, when we look at each section, and then when we get through the whole 15 pages, and we find something that we feel that isn't in there, and here again, I'll go back to what I said when I was talking about Altamont, as far as protecting the city manager and protecting the commissioners. If we find something where there's not enough protection, and maybe we need to write something in to give an ability for arbitration, or give the ability for even an outside person to come in and sit down with two parties to talk about and resolve an issue, then you may end up with, a half a dozen. Here again, you don't know until you go through the whole thing, as far as
Exactly.
I can tell. I mean, I can go through the first 3 sections and tell you I don't think anything needs to be changed, but, that's just me.
May I say something?
Yes, Phyllis?
I'm sorry.
Ms. Allen, I'm sorry.
I didn't have my,
That's fine, you're fine.
Okay, last week I had to leave, last week I had to leave an hour early, so I don't really know what you guys talked about in that hour, but I'm looking at both sides of the coin, right? Like for as we were talking about the amendments / some rewrites. when we talk about reviewing the charter, as we go through these different sections, and I heard you for it's like, just go through things and write things down if you have a problem prior to us getting there. I thought the whole purpose was kind of, sort of, to rewrite it in a sense, like, because it's over 25 years old, and within that time period, so much in the world has changed.
I would tell you the Constitution of the United States is several hundred years old, and there's only, what, 25? I thought it was 26
and probably need more.
So,
you know.
well, but there is a process, and this is our, for all intents and purposes, our Constitution, and that's the way I'd like, for me personally, that's the way I look at it, is our Constitution, and we're going to make amendments to the Constitution. We can do, we're scheduled tonight to talk about sections 1 through 4, and then we'll talk about what we want to do the next meeting. And you know, if the next meeting, the section 5 presents itself as a major issue, then we can tackle that then. Okay. So section 1 is the city charter of the city of Deltona, Florida, is hereby amended to read as follows, and it indicates a short title. And I'm not going to read this for you all because you have it in front of you. And then section 2 is legislative intent. And then section 3, which I think is kind of what we've been talking about a little bit tonight, incorporation of municipal and corporate limits and the municipal powers. So short title. Is anybody uncomfortable with the way the short title is written now? Where it is cited as the City of Deltona Charter, herein referred to as the charter. Are we good with that? Yay?
Yay.
Yay? Okay.
Madam Chair, go ahead.
I don't think we need to vote on.
Well, I was going to ask you if,
I'm thinking by consensus on these as we go through them, and then if there's an amendment that is offered, we could vote on
Madam
that.
Attorney, are we better off making a motion and accepting each, for instance, section 1, short title, should we just accept that if there's consensus, or should we make a motion and put it to a vote that it stays the way it is and go through that with each section as we move forward?
I mean, it's not really a legal question. Y'all can do it any way you want to do it.
Okay,
I mean,
Thank you.
as a means to get to the end.
Yeah, I'm in support of just doing a consensus. I think we're informal enough in this group that I mean, y'all are strong personalities. I'd say that with not in a negative way. I mean, you all speak up. I know, so I'm not worried.
I just
worried.
don't want to be in a situation where 6 weeks from now, somebody would come back and go, oh, we're going to redo we're going to go back and revisit section 1 now.
Well, then let's have an understanding of that tonight, that once we go through that section, unless there is some burning issue that comes up during the process of this committee, that we've done the work on that. Is that good?
Sounds good.
I would like that to be the
Okay.
intent. I thought we agreed on that
Yeah.
the first night. But I mean, obviously, if we get into this and we change section 5, something in section 5, and it's going to impact section 1 now, obviously, we'd have to go back and bring that up for discussion. But the general intent, I think, is that once we pass it,
finish a section, we're
keep moving
ready to move
right?
on. Okay, section 2, legislative intent. Deltona Lakes area in Volusia County. It describes as a compact and contiguous urban community, amenable to separate municipal government. And then number 2, it is in the best interest of the public health, safety, and welfare to form a separate municipality for the Deltona Lakes area with all powers and authority necessary to provide efficient and municipal services to its residents. Is there any concern about section 2, legislative intent? Okay, we're good there. Section 3, incorporation of municipal and corporate limits. There is hereby created in Volusia County a new municipality to be known as the City of Deltona, which shall have a commission manager form of government, and it defines the corporate boundaries of the City of Deltona, refers to them as the city, and describes them in section 9, number 1. So we are commission manager form of government, is this an issue that you need to weigh in on, that we want to change the commission form of government, or are we good with what we've got? Sounds good to you, Mr. Bryan? Okay. Ms. Allen, are you okay with that?
I'm okay with the commission manager part,
Okay.
but the second sentence, the corporate boundaries of the city. I know you guys were saying right now the city is 80, did
I
you
think
say-
this just means the definition of the actual boundary of the city.
Right, of the city, right? But it was saying, the way I'm interpreting it is that the corporate boundaries of the city of Deltona, hereinafter referred as the city, should be as described in section 9.1. I guess I need to check out section 9.1 to see how they're describing the corporate boundaries. And the reason why I'm saying that, because, that's one of the issues we have in Deltona, that we do not have the corporate there's really no corporate here, unless we're looking at the
So-
city as being,
So this
are we
is,
looking at the city as being the corporate in this section?
well, cities are corporate, are
Right, but I'm
considered-
saying, is this saying corporate as in the city being corporate, or corporate as in other businesses corporate?
No, it's talking about the
Okay,
boundaries
so
of.
city as being
And if you go
corporate.
to 9.1, it says the corporate boundaries of the city of Deltona and the district boundaries thereof shall remain as they exist on the date this amended charter provision takes effect, providing that the city shall have the power to change such boundaries in a manner prescribed by law. I would think that would be specific to annexation. And a description of the corporate boundaries and district boundaries shall be maintained on file in the city clerk's office and made available to the public. So it's just the definition of the corporate boundary,
Okay.
okay? Okay, are we good with section 3? Okay. And then section 4 is municipal powers, and the city shall be a body corporate and politic, and shall have all the powers of municipality under the Constitution and laws of the state of Florida as fully and completely as through such powers were specifically enumerated in the charter, unless otherwise provided by contrary to the provisions of the charter. And then it talks about the city shall have all governmental, corporate, and proprietary powers necessary to enable it to conduct municipal government, perform municipal functions and services. I had a question on this one, and I'll direct it to the attorney. The final sentence in that is the powers of the city shall be liberally construed in favor of the city. Madam Attorney, could you just elaborate a little bit on what that means?
Well, we have been seeing legislature after legislature. It seems the whole reason they convene is to try and take power away from local government.
I would agree with that.
So we are in a time where we need to hang on to every single thing we have. So I wouldn't change any, because this is the maximum power that a new government receives when they incorporate. I would say with regards to that last sentence, that's an argument you would use in court, basically to try and argue that the state legislation is overstepping its bounds. And we're dealing with this right now.
We are.
Big time. They're regulating what a home business can be, which can now be pretty intrusive in a neighborhood. The state wants to decide. The state wants to decide food trucks. The state wants to decide all of these things that we have to deal with.
Yeah, they're taking away a lot of home rule power.
And it's
right
kind
now.
of like, don't they have something else to do? I mean, it seems like they have no other business other than to take away local government's power. So I'm in the process of writing ordinances with regards to us trying to hang on and work around what the state's trying to take away from us. So that's how I would interpret it. I think those words are very important.
That was my interpretation, but I just wanted to put that into the record that, okay. Is there any questions on municipal powers, or any comments that you want to make on municipal powers?
Or are we done with municipal, are we done with 1 through 4?
No, we're doing 4 now. We're on 4,
Right,
number
right.
4.
Okay, I'll
So
wait till 4
is
is
your
done.
question on number 4? No.
No,
Okay.
it's just a conglomerate question.
Okay, all right.
So are you suggesting that?
Mr. Brower, talk into your mic, please. We're being recorded.
Pardon me. Are you suggesting to add something to this to strengthen those protections?
No, we really can't. We have the maximum.
Okay.
I don't know why. I don't know if it's my mic that's reverberating, but anyway, we have the maximum power we can get, which we need. And the chair had asked, what was that last sentence? What did it mean? And to me, what it means is that's basically our argument in court to say, state, get off our stuff. You know, so, I mean, that was all. But no, we really, there's nothing extra we can add to armor ourselves more than what we have in these words. It's just that we have to be aware and always be trying to, you know, make sure our legislation, we're using it to its maximum, you know, efficacy. And that is not easy because every year we're getting hit with multiple bills that are taking power away from local government. And the state is trying to insert itself in where we can have food trucks and where they're just getting really involved in what I consider local business. But
Well,
that's what they're
At the
doing.
county level, too. I mean,
Oh, I know,
it's
state,
just-
yeah,
It's
city
like,
and
why do we
county.
have anybody but just the state is, I think, their intention.
Yeah, and of course, from my perspective, like, they're doing such a good job up there. But anyway, that's just my own personal
Okay.
comment.
Thank you. Okay, so specific, I never can say that word right, Don. Right, okay. No, specific. I never can say that word right.
I'll just wait till you.
Okay, so are we good on section 4, municipal powers? Okay, we'll pass on that. And that concludes the review of sections 1 through 4. Mr. Philpott.
And I can accept sections 1 through 4, but going back to the discussion we had earlier about the size of Altamont Springs stuff, and I was looking at containing but shortening what was in there. And this, I just throw this out for consideration. And I went back to the model charter where they had a preamble that was in there. And so I took sections out of 1, 2, 3, and 4 and added a little bit here and there, but it's we the people of Deltona, under the Constitution and laws of the state of Florida, having established and maintaining a municipality known as the city of Deltona, do hereby adopt this charter. Located within Volusia County, the city of Deltona will operate under a commission manager form of government designed to serve its residents. Having grown to the second most populous city in Central Florida, the city of Deltona will use all the powers of a municipality to provide for the public health, safety, and welfare of its residents through a variety of services and civic leadership. Citizen participation will be a key element in the development of future goals for the city of Deltona. So that was sort of the concept I had when I was thinking about a rewrite, is not getting rid of the core of what's there, but just looking to readdress it. Because the question comes up, and once again, I can live with here, but are we looking at including comments about Deltona Lakes just for history of the city? Because that's long gone. The city of Deltona has taken that over for a long period of time. So, you know, why?
Well, I do think your comment about public participation, I think, that, you know, as we move through this document, there certainly would be a place to either reiterate it, I haven't gone that far into it to see if that's there, or to add something like that. But are you recommending that would replace sections 1 through 4?
No, that's what I was saying was, had we
Oh, okay.
looked at
Okay.
redoing, I'm not looking to
Okay.
throw all the stuff away, just looking at a rewrite, reorganization of what's.
Okay.
You're basically asking to combine them.
That's the way that I ended
Yeah,
up.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Mr. Novick.
For the attorney, is there another process with regards to the charter to codify language in the charter?
Not that I'm aware of. I only know.
Because that's really what Don's talking
Yes.
about, is codification.
And see, and the issue I have with, I agree that you don't need 2 and 3 if you don't want to have them, but we need 4, and we need 4 the way it's written with those words. Because that, when a new city, when you go up to Tallahassee and you want to create a new city, you come up with an incorporation study and your charter. So that charter, you know, everybody has to do that. Now, later on, counties can add, they didn't used to have charters, and then over the years, they've created charters. So to me, that language is like very important for us to have just as it's written, because everybody's got that language. That's a city to protect what we're trying to protect. The other stuff is, you know, and I've been, you know, some, you know, as I've been, you know, looking, we've got, you know, categories, a group 1 and a group 2, like in Lake Wales. And it seems like in some of these smaller places, they've gotten a little more creative with how they're doing some things. And then, you know, like in Palm Coast, they removed, you know, that, and deleted sections that weren't relevant. When this charter first came into being, those were very relevant. Today, they're not. But you can keep them, I mean.
So let me ask a question. If we were to remove those, that would count as a ballot question, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so it would
Well,
not be my
but
recommendation that
we may
do
be
that.
able to group them. Like, say you had a ballot question to remove and update portions. We could, you know, we may be able to redo meetings, like when we bring tech in, or, you know, and do a number of things in that category, in with about 1 ballot question dealing with outdated and, you know, and then adding new. So it's possible. It basically, it's like you don't want to have too many ballot questions.
That was,
So
yeah.
that's, you know, so you have to kind of, you know, reserve, you know, where you're going, unless what John has been talking about trying to, you know, basically replace it. But if we're just using ballot questions, we could definitely, as you go through this, you'll see more outdated stuff that we could dump,
Well,
if that's what you want to do.
As an example, you talk about how many ballot questions, and that's why I brought this up before about, you know, did we see a half a dozen or less questions going on the ballot? We could, through this process of this charter review committee, give a list, come up with a list of suggested ballot questions, okay? And then we could come up with a list of suggested changes for the commission to consider. Because each year, each election, or on a special election, the commission could choose to hold a special election away from the 2022 election to address these codification issues. Okay? Now, that would cost them money to hold a special election.
Yeah.
But the voters, you have to look at the voters of this county and what they have traditionally done with amendment language. And if there's too much, too fast,
They vote it
they
down.
just reject it all
They vote it
sweepingly.
down. Yeah.
Okay? So if we want to have an issue such as the technology component to pass, we need to be careful about what other things we include with that. That's why I asked about, is there another process? So we could give a list of suggestions of questions. The commission's going to decide what goes on the ballot, not us. We're only feeding them stuff. So we could give them 2 lists. This is what we suggest you put on this election. This could be something for future consideration for you to look at. And it could be, that codification could just be all one ballot question in an off election year.
Well,
If they
Well, let
if
me
they
ask
chose
this
to do that.
question then, because I know from county government that the council can put an item on the ballot
Yes.
by supermajority. Is that the same, the commission here could either accept or reject what we do, or replace if they
Yeah.
decided they wanted to.
They're the ultimate
Right.
And then with
Right.
regards to outdated language, again, this would have to be a lawyer question. You know, talk about removing the Deltona Lakes language. Well, that's in almost every property description on every
is.
plat.
I would be reluctant on
That
that.
exists. And I don't know if in the future, if you take out that piece of the chain now, if there could be a challenge to a piece of property based upon that language now no longer
I
being
don't
in the
know,
charter.
yeah.
I don't know. But I wouldn't want to open up that door right now, because I think there's other more important questions to go on the ballot.
As far as Deltona Lakes, I mean, I hate to put it this way, but I'm still paying an HOA fee to them.
You're what?
Paying an HOA fee to Deltona Lakes.
That's to the company.
Right. But what I'm saying, it still exists.
Okay.
It may not exist the way he's talking,
Actually-
but Deltona Lakes still exists in a roundabout way.
Well, actually, I wish, that it's too late now, but I actually wish we had named the town Deltona Lakes instead of just Deltona, so.
You're paying that to the company,
I-
not to the legal description that exists
Okay.
on all these platforms.
So we've completed our review of sections 1 through 4. Before we move to city manager comments, I would recommend that our next meeting, we tackle section 5 and section 6. Section 5 is pretty significant and several pages long, and I think there are some things in there that might draw some interest. Section 6 is budget and appropriations.
Madam
and
Chair, my suggestion would be just section 5.
Just
for the next
section
meeting.
5? Okay.
I think,
All right.
there could be significant discussion in that, well, yeah, it's very lengthy, and I know myself, I'm
Okay,
going to
well,
have
just
2 items,
section-
possibly 3.
Section 5
for
it is. Is that
section
okay with
5.
everybody? Just section 5? So we do our homework on section 5 and come prepared?
I was going to recommend just section 5 because I believe it's going to be
Okay.
a very good discussion.
Very rich discussion, huh? Okay. Mr. City Manager, do you have any comments you would like to make?
No, ma'am, I just want to say I'm very impressed with the way you all are working together.
Give us some time.
Well,
I'm
this
kidding.
is your second night, but, you know, I will reserve my opinion until we go through section 5.
Okay, that's fair enough. Okay, any final comments from members of the committee?
I would just, if I may,
Sure, Mr.
unless you want
I
to just
do
start,
have a
you want to just start and go
Well,
around?
yeah, we'll do it this way then.
Okay.
Don, is there anything you have, what you want? Okay. Mr. Brower?
No, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Novick?
I just want to be careful that this is not, in my opinion, I have no intention of allowing this to be a staff-driven process.
Well, exactly.
This committee will
This
drive
committee.
this process. Staff is here to assist us technically and provide resources, but this is not going to be a staff-driven process of going through this. So as we ask for items, staff can provide them to us and provide some insight, but staff's not going to guide this process. So if we have comments or things on a particular section, and we need resources, I don't know if you've had any conversation with the manager. If not, we can ask him tonight. What is the process for, and I have a follow-up question, what is the process for requesting resources?
Are you
Fine.
talking about information?
I'm talking about if
What-
this board wants to do something that's going to cost money, what is the process for this board to get that money appropriated? Do we have a budget? Is there a budget for this process?
As I understand it, there is, under budget, there was an NA, but I'm happy as a chairman to go before the city commission and have the conversation with them.
I don't know, Marcia knows a lot about municipal law and stuff, but we may get into something that's very specific that might require a specialized attorney
Specialist.
to answer a question.
Right.
Or there may be, we may need some printing done of some maps or something. I don't know. I'm just saying, I haven't heard any discussion about, is there a budget for this and what is this
We have
committee's
not had
process?
that discussion, and the last item, the last agenda was, had not applicable under budget issue, but I think your comments are appropriate. And
Well, because the manager offered to make a purchase, some document he was going to get for Robert's Rules of Order. You were going to get some cards or something. That's an expense. I guess that's coming out of his.
well, and that's a good question, because I don't know what level of expenditure the city manager has that does not have to go before the commission. So, Mr. Peters, if you would like to address this, if you,
Yeah, I would be happy to. My spending authority is the $25,000. So as far as I'm concerned, if Mr. Novick wants us to, and the consensus of everybody is you want to have a drone fly over the city so you have a nice video of what it looks like, and you have a viable reason, if under $25,000, I would likely do it.
okay.
If it's going to be over $25,000, we need to have a discussion about what we think the ultimate budget is going to be. For instance, if you all decide that you want to bring in the attorney that put it together a complete charter change just to get some information, that attorney may charge us, $28,000. We would take it to the commission for their consideration. But up to $25,000, my commitment to you all is to provide the resources so that you can do the best job you can, and that is my commitment. So.
Thank you. My second
you had a
question.
second question.
My second question is, I'm sure everybody watches the news and what's going on. The numbers are on the rise again for COVID. We don't know what's going to happen in the next several days or several weeks. This committee has a lot of work to do. What will be the process if we go back to the condition we were in earlier in the pandemic? Are we going to be allowed to continue meeting as a Zoom meeting, or will we do more social distancing? Is there a plan for that?
I'm sure you have a plan that you're formatting for the commission. So I would think we would follow that same plan.
What I will say to that is, if certain people don't want it, the dais is set up with plexiglass between each of the seats, and each one of you all would have a protected area up there. We can require masks. Tonight, what we did is we purposely set it up to where we had 6 feet between each of you, which is the CDC guidelines. Each of you all can choose to wear masks. The city policy for our employees is that we wear masks unless we're in office by ourselves, or we can at least maintain 6 feet of separation. So our goal is to conduct safe, solid meetings, and the worst that I can tell you that could happen would be putting people up there so that we had the plexiglass between you.
Okay.
I figured I knew the answer to that. I just wanted to get it on the record. Thank you, Madam.
Okay, Ms.
I have
Allen?
a question.
Your turn.
Is it inappropriate to have everybody in here being vaccinated?
Yeah, I think that's.
I'll share with you. I'm vaccinated
I've
since January.
vaccinated.
The reason why I'm asking, because they were saying if you're around vaccinated people, you don't have to put on the mask.
No, that's not what they're saying now. They changed today.
CDC
Well, I know I
changed that
heard the
today.
CDC changed it
said
today.
if you're vaccinated and you inside of a building, you put your mask on.
Right.
It's a fluid situation.
Yeah, it's
CDC
fluid.
made some new recommendations.
But I'm happy to
today.
tell you I've been vaccinated. I would encourage anybody, when this goes out on the record, to get vaccinated if you haven't
Absolutely.
yet. So, Mr. Bryan, you have any final thoughts?
Well, one thing I will say is that as far as the way this committee's interacted and everything, I'm very pleased with the way we've all interacted. As far as Mr. Peters put me up on that DS, that's going to be rather tough. I like being on that side of that podium, not up on that side. But in all seriousness,
You're doing just fine on this side. I know it's hard for you, but you're okay.
well, as everybody knows here, I've been on that side of that podium for 20-some odd years now. I enjoy that side of my podium. But what I will say is that I think as long as we keep an open mind and keep the conversation open, I think then we'll be all right. What I will say as far as Mr. Novich and what I consider the budget, I don't see anything other than really quote-unquote paper being used for this committee. If you need something more than that, like Mr. Peters is saying, as far as a lawyer maybe one day coming in here and talking to us or otherwise, that would be a different story. As far as going in front of the commission and talking about a budget, I just don't see it unless you're going
Well,
way out
I'm
of
not
line.
going, I heard from the manager that he
Right.
has got appropriate ability to spend,
as he
so
should.
I'm not,
But like
unless there's something that would come up, but.
Right. So, I mean, as far as the budget's concerned,
Yeah.
it's going to be more paper than anything else in our time.
I think part of it too is, a commitment that this is an independent committee, and there are things that if we ask for, we want to be assured that we will be able to get them, and Mr. Peters has assured us that that's
See, I
the
think
case.
Mr. Peters will take care of you.
Yeah.
I have a question for you guys. I'm kind of like the new person to Deltona, compared to
Welcome.
all of you
Yeah.
guys. The question, it just keep ringing in my head. It's like, do you guys see Deltona being like a tourist destination?
No, I don't think so.
That
no.
depends on what you define as a tourist, because
I think we have
I've-
some
I've tried-
nature-based tourism that will come through our way, but I don't think that's really what this city is.
Ecotourism.
I say ecotourism has been a big
Yeah.
thing, have been
Yeah.
brought up before the commission a lot, but that's not what I consider a big-time
Yeah,
tourism.
we're not going to have big
Not
hotels.
fund-generating type of
No.
Right.
tourism.
You're going to get more locals out of the ecotourism than you are anything else out of that.
But there is opportunity for them if you have little small businesses
Oh,
that
absolutely.
support that.
Right.
Winter Garden does pretty darn well.
So does Winter Park, for that
Yeah,
matter.
Winter Park too,
Yep.
yeah, so.
And there's things in the future that we have no control over right now that could impact that. Sunrail could decide to put a spur that comes off of the line over there in Ord City to Berry.
That plan had been done.
and come up to where Halifax Hospital's at.
472.
At 472. That could be a big factor in bringing
People,
the ease of people coming to
Yeah.
the Deltona area to experience ecotourism. But as far as, like Disney deciding to open up a racetrack here or something, I don't think that's going to happen.
Oh, come on now.
Now,
Okay,
well-
I think with that, we will stand adjourned until next meeting. And the next meeting date, we said the first and third Tuesdays of the month, which I don't have my calendar up in front of me, but I know it's August. And we'll look at section 5 in its entirety. Is that good? Okay. Thank you all for coming. We're adjourned.